Hello, welcome to the very first episode of Podclass. This is a podcast series in Assessment in Learning 1, and I am your teacher podcaster, Mr. Brian M. Nozaleda. In the next sessions, in the next lessons, we shall be using this platform in delivering my instruction or sending to you the important information that you need to know and understand that pertains to our lessons in Assessment in Learning 1. And today, in this first episode, we shall be continuing our discussion on the 12 principles of high-quality assessment. I know that we have started already discussing the first two principles of high-quality assessment, and that is clarity and appropriateness of learning targets and the appropriateness of assessment methods. Now, today, while you are listening to me, I suggest that you are with your learning modules. I hope that you guys are holding your learning modules while you are listening to this podcast, because it would actually help you systematically study your learning modules. So while you listen to me, you actually have your learning modules with you, your self-learning modules with you, be it hard copy or soft copy. Take notes. Okay? Markahan nyo yung mga modules nyo, i-highlight nyo yung mga dapat na o yung mga importanteng sinasabi ko. Gawin nyo lahat while listening to my module or to my podcast, because that would actually make or increase your retention and understanding while you are listening to my discussion. So let us just have a quick recap of the first two principles of high quality assessment. And here in your module, it is clarity and appropriateness of learning targets. Last time, we talked about Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain, and I have told you that it is very important to set clear and smart objectives. By saying smart, it is specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and time-bound. And not only that, but in setting our targets, we must take note that there are actually 4 types of learning targets. Number 1, that is knowledge. Number 2, that's reasoning. Number 3, that's skills. Number 4 are products. And the last one is the affective disposition. So what is the meaning of these 4 or these 5 types of learning targets? Well, I just mentioned a while ago about Bloom's taxonomy, and hindi ito nalalayo sa 5 types of learning targets sa pag-uusapan natin ngayon. So yung una ay yung knowledge. So knowledge is yung kaalaman ng ating mga estudyante, yung mastery nila ng subject matter. That's what we mean by knowledge. So it has the same meaning with the knowledge of Bloom's taxonomy, that it is similar to the idea of remembering. So when someone remembers something, when someone knows the idea or the concept or the theory, then that's what we mean by knowledge. So being aware, okay, having an increased awareness or retention of anything really means that there is knowledge there. So there is a substantive mastery of the subject matter. The second one is reasoning. So reasoning is the student's ability to use knowledge to reason and solve problems. So it's a combination of understanding or a comprehension in the Bloom's taxonomy and application in the Bloom's taxonomy, because you are not actually knowing only, but you are applying what you are learning, or you are using what you just have learned. So when the ability to use knowledge, to explain ideas, to argue to people, that manifests a reasoning learning target. So there are several assessment tools that could actually measure knowledge and reasoning, which we have talked about in our previous lesson. Skills, on the other hand, is the ability to demonstrate achievement-related skills. As much as there are 3 domains of learning, skills are more related to the psychomotor domain of learning. So if there's a demonstration of related skills or the demonstration of a learning competency, that is a performance-based assessment, and that belongs to the skills learning target. So when you let your students dance a particular folk dance, or maybe write an essay or deliver a speech, that is actually a that's covering skills learning targets. The fourth one is products. So products means the student's ability to create achievement related products. So when they are able to produce something, in fact, it's a performance based type assessment, but in the next subject, no, the second leg of assessment and learning, you will be knowing that there are actually two types of performance-based assessment. That's products focus, and we have the process focus. So the products learning targets are more on that products focus type of performance-based assessment. So when you're able to create something, to make a product, that's definitely products learning targets. And the last one is affective disposition. So this is more on the affect level. So in the affective domain of learning. So it means the student's attainment of affective states such as attitudes, values, interests, and self-efficacy. Now, the second principle of high quality assessment is the appropriateness of method. So as much as we have specified our learning targets, we should also be clear about the assessment tools that we shall be using in measuring the performance of our students. For example, it is not appropriate to use a multiple choice type of test when you're trying to assess the ability of your students to communicate with people. Or maybe it's not really authentic, or it's not really appropriate to use a performance-based type test if you're only measuring the ability of your students to recall the national heroes of the Philippines. So these targets require specific assessment methods that are appropriate and that is suited to the context of the objective or the learning competency or the learning targets. So here in your module, you will see a table. Okay, a table from this is a DepEd order on assessment released by the Department of Education, and you will see here examples of assessment strategies for conversations, for formative assessment, and for summative assessment. So this could give you an idea of the different assessment tools that teachers may use, but they cannot use this in all kinds of objectives. But you have to remember that specific objectives require specific assessment methods, and you have to be aware of this assessment tool so that you could select which assessment method is appropriate for a certain learning target. So we shall now be proceeding to the principles that we have not discussed in the past session. And the third principle is balance. So when we talk about balance, you are hitting all levels or all levels of thinking skills. Remember, we have lower order thinking skills and the higher order thinking skills in the Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain. So when you are developing an assessment tool, you have to make sure that you're not only measuring the lower order thinking skills or the higher order thinking skills, but you are measuring both. Okay, because it is important that as a teacher, you must be aware that your students are not at all the same. If you are entering a class with 50 students, you're actually dealing with 50 different kinds of students. And it is important that we make a balance, or we consider balance in our assessment, because as much as we want that all our students are competent enough or are performing, that is very hard to happen. That's very difficult to happen, in fact. Okay, so when we talk about balance, a balance assessment sets targets in all domains of learning. So it's not enough that you're only targeting the cognitive domain of learning, but you're also developing tools or adopting assessment strategies that would also measure the psychomotor domain and the affective domain of our learners. Kaya nga, importante na pag tayo ay nagtuturo, hindi lang natin tinuturo kung paano gumana yung utak, but at the same time, we're teaching our students how to demonstrate a certain skill and what are the possible change in behavior or attitude that they could have while having that particular lesson. So especially in MAPE, most of the assessment methods that are used by teachers are performance-based activities. there are actually cognitive based assessments, but real learning is measured through performance tasks. In fact, in the Department of Education, a larger percentage of the total grade is accounted to performance task. If I'm not mistaken, it's 50%. Okay, so 20% lang yung written assessment, but the performance tasks are actually 50%. That means that the Department of Education, or in basic education per se, are giving more importance to the performance tasks because those are authentic assessments. And balanced assessment makes use of both traditional and alternative assessment. So the fourth principle of high quality assessment is validity. So validity is the ability of a test to measure what it intends to measure. Okay, it is the ability of a test to measure what it intends to measure. So it also refers to the usefulness of the instrument for a given purpose. It is the most important criterion of a good assessment instrument, and we will be discussing this in detail in the unit 3 of this learning module. But this time, let's talk about validity in a brief discussion. So validity is basically the ability of a test to measure what it intends to measure. So that means that we have to look for a test, or we have to use a test that tests or that measures kung ano nga ba yung i-measure niya. Because if your test is not valid, the inference that you can have from the results of the test will not also be valid. I'll give you a very good example. You don't use a ruler to measure the weight of a person, right? Because a ruler intends to measure the height or the length of a certain material, right? So in other words, you don't use the ruler to measure the weight because that is not the intended purpose of the ruler. Same goes true with using a thermometer to measure the volume of a liquid, because a thermometer is not intended to measure the volume of any liquid. It is intended to measure the temperature of anything, of your surroundings, or of a material. In other words, validity simply means the ability of a certain test to measure what it intends to measure. That's basically validity. So for example, in the context of the classroom, if a teacher uses a spelling test to measure the ability of a child to communicate, is that a valid test? If your answer is no, then you are correct, because a spelling test could not actually measure the ability of someone to communicate. So we cannot say that that is actually valid. Another example is, for example, this is the situation. Your students are having a hard time answering their midterm exam because what you are actually administering to them is your final exam. And then you would say, and then you would check their papers and the results are very low. And so you told your students, you are so very stupid. All of you are stupid. Wala man lang nakapasa sa exam ko. Tinuro ko naman lahat yan. But, going back, what was actually administered to you is the final exam. So the question is it a valid test? Does the exam really measure what it intended to measure? The expectation was that it will be measuring the performance of the students in their midterms and not in their finals. In other words, is the test valid? If your answer is no, then you are again correct. Okay? The test is not valid because it does not measure what it intends to measure. Alright? So there are many types of validity. In fact, now we have content validity, we have phase validity, we have criterion-related validity, concurrent validity, predictive validity, construct validity, convergent validity, and discriminant validity. But I will just be discussing to you 3 or 4 of these types of validity, and we will be discussing them in the next unit. In the next units in detail. All right, so let's talk about content validity. the question that is related to this is, does the measure adequately measure the concept? That's what we mean by content validity. In other words, we're looking at the content of the test. Okay, is the content of the test valid? So for example, you are taking a midterm exam, but the content of the test is actually from the finals. So are you measuring the performance in the finals? Of course not. You are measuring their performance in the midterm. So it is just but right that you include items in the midterms. So it is just but right that you include items in the content of your tests from the midterm topics. In other words, if that's what you did, then you don't have content validity, because the content of your test does not actually measure what you intend to measure. All right, so that's why it is important for teachers to actually develop what we call a table of specifications, or TOS. Okay, take that down. No? We call that TOS, or table of specifications. We shall be discussing that in the next unit. So TOS is a instrument used by teachers to guide them in developing their assessment tools, especially for multiple choice type of tests. So in the TOS, the topics are listed there, the objectives are listed there, so that teachers would know there should be items from these topics, there should be items from these certain objectives. In that way, teachers will be able to set the parameter, the area, the scope, the coverage of the examination. So when the teacher is able to do that, then there we have content validity. So basically, when we talk about content validity, we're looking at what is inside the test. Okay, so if it is it's measuring what it intends to measure, then there is actually validity. Don't forget, what helps teachers in developing or in establishing content validity in their tests, we call that the TOS, or table of specifications. The second one, ladies and gentlemen, is phase validity. So from the word phase itself, okay, do experts validate that the instrument measures what its name suggests it measures? Okay, so there is a there's another definition that we could actually that is more understandable, or that is easier to understand. No, when we talk about phase validity, we look at the face of the material. We look at the external, or not really external, but we look at the look of the material. We look at the look of the material. So it's literally the face of the material, how it looks like. So for example, if your test is not so well reproduced, hindi malinaw yung pagka-photocopy, malabo yung pagka-photocopy, o kaya naman ay mali-mali yung spelling, o kaya naman masyadong malalalim yung mga salitang ginamit mo sa test, that could actually hinder the understanding of your students, then there's something wrong in your test. Okay, let's look at that example. No, for example, you're teaching mathematics, and then most of the problems in your test are using deep words or highfalutin words in English. Okay, and to the point that your learners will not be able to understand what you're trying to say to them. So you're not actually teaching them English, you're not actually teaching them vocabulary, but you're teaching them mathematics. So the results were very low because they cannot understand the problem sets. So does the result really reflect the competency or the achievement of your students? If your answer is no, then you are correct, because you're not actually teaching them vocabulary, but you're teaching them mathematics. Okay, so we look at the face of our test when we talk about face validity. So halimbawa, mababa yung score sa mga estudyante mo kasi malabo yung pagka-photocopy ng exam mo. Hindi nila mabasa. So sasabihin mo, ba't ang baba ng scores nyo? Hindi kayo nag-aaral na maigi, for example. So you made judgments already. Bagsak kayong lahat. You made these remarks already. So paano yan? Are the remarks, are the judgments valid? There's a question to that. Why? Kasi nga malabo yung test. So, hindi nila kasalanan ng exam mo. Ang tawag natin doon, face validity. So, you have to establish that too as a teacher. Now, let's proceed to predictive validity. So, what is predictive validity? Predictive validity is the ability of a test to actually foresee or to predict a future criterion. So, for example, a test in mathematics could actually predict your performance in science, or a science test can actually predict your performance in math. So if there is a strong predictive power, so merong predictive validity yung test mo. Okay? Another example will be using board examinations or pre-board examinations. So our college College of Human Kinetics actually practices mock boards or pre-board examination. So pag graduate na kayo, bago kayo graduate, magte-take kayo ng pre-board so that we will be able to know kung eto bang na makakapasa na ba kayo sa actual licensure examination. So, yung resulta ng pre-board nyo ang magsasabi kung papasa kayo o hindi. Okay? But we have established already the predictive validity of our material. So, meron siyang tinatawag na predictive validity. Alright? So, that's what we mean by validity. So, it simply means the ability of a test to measure what it intends to measure. Alright? So, the rest of the types of validity, we shall be discussing them in the next topics. Okay? The fifth principle of high-quality assessment is reliability. So, what is reliability? Reliability simply means consistency. Okay? Pulugan nyo yung salitang yan. It means consistency. Consistent ba ang jowa nyo if you have a jowa? No? If you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, the question is, consistent ba sila? Ang ibig sabihin ng consistent ay kung anong ginawa nila ngayon o kung anong klaseng tao sila ngayon, ganun din sila bukas at magpakailanman. Kung ganun sila, kung ang sagot sa tanong ko ay oo o yes, consistent ang tawag doon. So, halimbawa, sinusundo ka ngayon. Kinabukasan, sinusundo ka pa rin. Kinabukasan, sweet pa rin siya sa'yo. Pero isang araw, hindi na ganun ang pakikitungo niya sa'yo. Wala nang spark. So, consistent bang matatawag yon? Hindi. Okay? Hindi siya reliable therefore. Kasi ang reliability, it refers to the consistency of the scores obtained by the same person. So, in the context, okay? In the context of the classroom, kung nagpa-test ka ngayon ng midterm exam mo at na nakuha ng bata ay 30 at pinatest mo ulit sa kanya, ang nakuha niya ay 29 or 30 mismo, pinatest mo ulit the next month, ganun pa rin na nakuha niya. Ibig sabihin, reliable yung examination mo. Okay? Pero kung hindi, there's something wrong with that. Kung hindi naging ganun ang naging resulta doon sa iyong examination. So, reliability simply means the consistency of a certain instrument. Okay, so we will be discussing this once more in the next units in Assessment and Learning 1. Okay, so in a nutshell, if a test repeatedly elicits the same performance from your learners, that test is said to be reliable. Okay, magkaiba ang validity at ang reliability. But let me tell you, a valid test is always a reliable test. But not all reliable tests is actually valid. Take note of that. Not all tests that are reliable is actually valid. But when the test is already valid, we could already establish that the test is indeed reliable. Alright, so you look at the picture there and you will be able to understand the difference between reliability and validity. Okay, the sixth principle of high quality assessment, ladies and gentlemen, is fairness. So what do you mean by fairness? Fairness, people, is providing all students with an equal opportunity to demonstrate achievements. So, fairness simply means there is an equal treatment to your students. You are providing them equal opportunities. You're giving them equal chances to participate with different activities in your class. So there are several keys to fairness, and these are as follows. 1, students have knowledge of learning targets and assessment. Okay? Dapat alam ng mga estudyante mo kung ano yung objectives mo sa klase. Maraming mga estudyante ang hindi naiintindihan o hindi alam kung saan sila papunta o anong direksyon nila sa loob ng classroom kasi hindi mo na ipapaliwanag sa kanila kung ano ang inaasahan sa kanila. 'Di ba? Marami sa mga guro ang hindi pinapaliwanag kung ano nga ba ang inaasahan sa period na ito o sa klase na ito, 'di ba? Diretso na lang sa pagtuturo, pero hindi sinasabi kung para saan ba? Ano nga ba ang objectives natin ngayon? So napaka-importante o napakahalaga na kailangang malaman ng ating mga estudyante kung ano yung learning targets nila. Okay? Ano yung inaasahan mula sa kanila para meron silang expectations, meron silang visual image kung ano ba sila pagkatapos ng lesson na ito? Ano ang dapat nilang nalaman pagkatapos ng lesson na ito? Okay? The second one is that students are given equal opportunity to learn. Okay? Sabi ko nga noon, magkakaiba ang mga estudyante natin. Okay? Meron tayong tinatawag na multiple intelligences theory. So, hindi lang talino sa utak, sa pag-memorize, pero maraming uri ng talino. There are many types of intelligences and we have to design assessment tools that would cater to those diverse types of learners. Okay? So, we have to give them equal opportunities. Okay? Katulad ngayon, bakit ako gumagamit ng podcast? Kasi, alam nyo, pagka podcast ang ginagamit, nakikinig lang kayo, pinakikinggan nyo lang ako. Malay ko kung merong mga learners dyan na mas natututo pag sila ay nakikinig ng mga bagay-bagay. Okay? So, we're trying these things. We're exploring different platforms in digital learning and we're looking at how effective these methods are. And then the third one is students possessing the prerequisite knowledge and skills. So, when we talk about this key to fairness, possessing the prerequisite knowledge and skills, dapat pag tayo ay nagturo, pag tayo ay magbibigay ng bagong konsepto, magpapaliwanag ng bagong konsepto o teorya sa ating mga estudyante, dapat naipaliwanag natin sa kanila kung ano ang kinakailangan from them before they proceed to this particular lesson. In that way, we could establish that all our students are prepared to deal with the present lesson. Okay? And then students are free from teacher stereotypes. Okay? Tama yan. Alam nyo, mga teachers din may mga stereotypes yan. Ano ba yung stereotyping? Stereotyping ay yung pagkakataon na ang mga guro ay merong preconception sa kanilang mga estudyante. Meron silang nabuong judgment sa kanilang mga estudyante na hindi pa naman nila nakalalaman kung tama ba ito o hindi. So, para kang nagiging judgmental. Parang ganun ang stereotyping eh. Pero in not a very judgmental way. Kasi stereotyping nga ito. May stigma na nabuo. Hindi natin kasalanan. Pero may stigma na nabuo o konsepto na nabuo sa ating komunidad o sa ating society na ganong klaseng pag-iisip. Halimbawa, isa sa stereotypes ng mga estudyante ng mga guro ay pag anak ng teacher yung kanilang isang estudyante, iisipin nila na dapat matalino din yung kanilang anak, 'di ba? Na dapat matalino din yung estudyante na yon kasi anak nga ni teacher eh. Isang stereotype 'yan kasi hindi naman lahat ng pagkakataon ay tama yung ganong pag-iisip. Pangalawa, kung ang estudyante ay nasa likod ng classroom, ano ang stereotype ni teacher diyan? Ang mag-iisip niya yan, ay hindi ito magaling. Ay pasaway ito, laging nasa likod mag-iingay yan. Those kind of things. Those are stereotypes. Another one is that when teachers are having high regards to those who are good at speaking English, 'di ba? Yung mga estudyante natin na marunong mag-English, yung magaling mag-English, and they would always think na ay matalino 'yan kasi magaling mag-English. Stereotypes, okay? Pero hindi sa lahat ng pagkakataon na yung mga magagaling mag-English ay matalino nga talaga. I know of many people who knows how to speak in English but they're not so good in terms of their classroom performance. So, ang tawag natin doon ay stereotypes. So, we have to free ourselves with those stereotypes, because if we are full of stereotypes, then we are not giving equal opportunities to our learners. We always have that favoritism. Kasi, uy, anak ni kumare ko yan, kaya dapat nandyan siya. Lagi siyang nasa harap, kaya nandyan siya. Uy, magaling mag-English, sige, ikaw lagi sasali ko sa math quiz B. Diba? So, those things, we have to eliminate those things in our system, because if we are full of stereotypes, and we will not be able to, make equal opportunities to our learners. Okay? The last one is that students are free from bias, assessment task, and procedures. Kaya nga, dapat alam natin yung nature ng ating mga learners para makapag-design tayo ng mga assessment tools na swak para sa kanila. Okay? Halimbawa, kung alam mong marunong siya sa poster making, or ganito na lang, halimbawa, meron kang particular subject matter, tinuro mo sa kanila, and that is a day for free assessment. Choose your own assessment tool that will demonstrate your learning in this particular topic. So you would not tell them what to do, or you would not tell them what to do, but you will give them choices on what they want to do to demonstrate that they have learned this particular lesson. Okay? In that way, you're giving them choices. And if your students will be able to choose one, that means that is relevant to their type of intelligence or to their nature as a learner. We call that unbiased assessment. Okay, so those are ways for us to actually establish fairness in our classroom. The seventh principle of high-quality assessment is practicality and efficiency. Okay? Sinasabi lang nito na when we assess our learners, the information obtained should be worth the resources and time required to obtain it. Okay? In other words, kailangan hindi masyadong matagal yung exam. Kasi kung masyado namang matagal, diba? Hindi na magiging valid yung resulta ng examination mo eh. Okay? So, practicality and efficiency may ask questions on teacher familiarity with the method. Kung hindi ka familiar dun sa assessment tool, ba't mo gagamitin? Okay? Pangalawa, time required. So, kung masyadong mahaba yung preparation mo bilang teacher dun sa assessment tool na hindi na siya swak doon sa resulta, it does not deserve that, then don't do it. Okay? So, you have to choose an assessment tool that is feasible, that is practical, and that's very efficient. Number three is complexity of the administration. Okay? Madaling i-administer yung examination. Ease of scoring. Okay? Madaling i-score. Ease of interpretation. From the score, alam mo na kung anong ibig sabihin nun. And of course, cost. Kung masyadong mahal yung exam, huwag mo nang ipatest. Okay? If it's not worth it, then don't do it. Okay? So, nagpa-test ka ng 50 items tapos original lahat, 'di ba? Printed lahat, 'di ba? That's too costly, okay? So think of that, okay? Think of that. So that is practicality and efficiency. The eighth principle of high quality assessment is continuity. Okay? Continuity. So makikita natin dito, no? Na-bring out na naman yung idea ng diagnostic, formative, and summative instruction. Diba? So, it could be done. So, assessment takes place in all phases of instruction. So, continuous yan. So, halimbawa, nagpa-formative test ka, nagpa-sit work ka, nagpa-board work ka, kung nagpa-recitation ka, dapat itong mga pinaggagawa mo habang ikaw ay nagtuturo, it should be connected with the things that you will be having or you will be including in your summative assessment. So, yung mga quiz mo, dapat related siya doon sa ginawa nyo sa klase. Yung mga board works nyo sa klase, yung mga pinarecite mo sa mga bata. Kasi kung hindi, there's no continuity there. Okay? Kasi parang bago lang sa paningin ng bata yung summative test mo because it did not occur during your discussion. So you have to make sure that they are actually related, they are relevant, they are connected to each other. Now, if you look at page 19 of your module, ayan, no? May makikita tayong table dito of the concept of pre-assessment, of formative assessment, and summative assessment. And this table came from the DepEd order in assessment, no? I think it's DepEd order number 15, series of 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So here, you look at what the definitions of pre-assessment, of formative assessment, and summative assessment. I have discussed this already, and you know already the meaning of diagnostic, of formative assessment, and of summative assessment. The ninth principle of high-quality assessment is authenticity. So, sabi ko nga nung una, authenticity is the quality of a certain test to mimic or to be similar with the tasks that are happening in the real world. Okay, yun yung tinatawag nating authenticity. So, in the 21st century education, a commonly advocated best practice for classroom assessment is to make assessment authentic. Okay, so authentic is mostly used to mean mirroring of real-world tasks or expectations. So further comparisons with traditional tests will help you clarify what authenticity means when considering assessment design and use. So, para mas maintindihan nyo ang authenticity, in the next bullets dito, makikita nyo yung pagkakaiba ng traditional assessment tsaka authentic assessment. So, isa lang ang explain ko sa inyo ha. You have to read the other differences of authentic assessment and traditional assessment. So, for example, the first one, no? Or let's say the third one na lang. Look at this. Authentic assessments can identify whether the students can craft, refine, detail, and reasonable responses, performances, or products. Conventional tests typically only ask the student to select or write correct responses. So you look at the difference there, no? Authenticity kasi, tinitignan natin kung may demonstration ba ng skill. Kaya nga, di ba? The paper and pencil test or traditional assessments are the least authentic mode of assessment, and the most authentic mode of assessment are portfolio, seconded by portfolio assessment. Kasi kung yung examination mo ay pipili lang yung bata ng tamang sagot, ilalagay niya lang yung tamang sagot, true or false lang, yung mga ganyang klase ng tanong, those are not authentic form of assessment. But there is a way for us to authenticize, to make our multiple choice tests or to make our short response and written tests to be authentic. When we put the context into a situation, yung mga sinasabi natin situational questions, doon nagkakaroon ng authenticity sa ating exam. Pero kung lalagay mo lang doon, who's the national hero of the Philippines, A, B, C, D. Those things, those items are not actually authentic. Okay, those are conventional tests or traditional tests. Okay, the 10th principle of high quality assessment is communication. Okay, so what is communication? Communication, ladies and gentlemen, only pertains to the ability or the actions that we do prior to examination, or the way we communicate with our learners prior to the examination, before the examination, during the examination, or after the examination. So for example, you have to make it a tradition that whenever you give examination to your students, you give them the coverage of the examination. You explain to them kung ano yung aasahan nilang lalabas sa exam, because that would actually help them prepare for the examination. May mga teachers din kasi na madamot. Gusto nila mag-fail yung mga estudyante nila, but don't do that. Okay? Don't follow those teachers. Assessment results should be communicated to important users. So pagka natapos na yung examination, dapat malaman naman ng mga estudyante kung ano yung performance nila. So you have to report it to them, but make it confidential. It is not a good practice that you announce the scores of your students to the whole class, especially if the scores are very low. But it's good though na yung mga matataas naman ang ibandera mo sa klase para ma-motivate naman yung mga top scorers mo, just like what I do in your quizzes. Okay? And in technology for teaching and learning, I did that for blocks for section A and section C. I'm not handling section B though. Alright, so next is assessment results should be communicated to students through direct interaction or regular ongoing feedback on their progress. So dapat na-explain mo sa kanila kung ano ang kailangan nilang gawin, bakit ganito yung resulta ng test nila, at anong kailangan nilang gawin, anong pwede nilang gawin para they could actually improve their performance in their examinations. Okay, so we're now down to the last two principles of high quality assessment, that is positive consequences and ethics. Okay, so when we talk about positive consequences, tests should not be resulting to the motivation of our students. So, to degrade them, no, okay? Assessment should have a positive consequence to our students. That is, it should motivate them to learn, okay? Assessment, the test results are just grades, are just numbers. What's important is that we learn from those experiences. We learn from the results of our examination, okay? Although, we cannot really disregard that grades are really important. Pag tayo ay nag-apply sa isang kumpanya, pag tayo ay nag-apply sa trabaho, syempre hahanapin nila yung TOR natin. So, although grades are just numbers, it's also a given, it's an additional factor or an edge if we have high grades, if we have good credentials, okay? So, assessment should also have a positive consequence to teachers. That is, it should help them improve the effectiveness of their instruction. So, dapat mag-reflect din kayo bilang isang magiging guro, mag-reflect kayo sa resulta ng exam ng iyong mga estudyante. Saan ako nagkamali? Anong pwede ko pang gawin para mas umangat yung performance ng aking mga estudyante? So, that is what we mean by positive consequences. May mga estudyante kasi, o may mga teachers din kasi na pag mababa ang score ng estudyante niya, masaya siya, di ba? Kaya papahiya pa yung estudyante pag mababa yung nakuha ng bata. That's not good. That's not a good practice, okay? We call that positive consequences. And the last principle of high quality assessment is ethics. Ethics is knowing what is good and knowing what is bad, okay? So you should know what's good and bad, okay? Number one is that teachers should free the students from harmful consequences or overuse of various assessment procedures such as embarrassing students and violating students' right to confidentiality. So you don't broadcast the results of the test. Ugali naman kasi ng mga teachers na okay, ganito. Pass your papers, 'di ba? Pass your papers. And then pagkatapos tatawag ng isang bata, announce, blah blah blah. And everyone will know the result of the test. Paano kung 0 yung nakuha nung isa? O 'di ba nakakahiya para sa kanya? 'Di ba? So that's not good. That's not a good practice. Or maybe getting all the scores and then i-announce mo yung 20 pass, 19 pass. Pag dumating ka na sa 0, 'di ba? Mahihiya naman yung estudyante na ipasa pa yung score sa'yo. Kasi nga 0 nga siya eh. Meron bang tao na gustong ipangalandakan sa buong mundo na 0 yung nakuha niya sa exam, 'di ba? So just get the papers and then record it by yourself. Okay? Record it by yourself. Teachers should be guided by laws and policies that affect their classroom assessment. That's why it's important that you know your code of ethics. Okay? Administrators and teachers should understand that it is inappropriate to use standardized student achievement to measure teaching effectiveness. Very true. Okay? It's always a two-factor or a multifactorial analysis. If your students had low grades, who's to blame for that? Is it the teacher? Is it the learner? Or is it the school itself? If you have a certain answer to that, then you are wrong because it's a multifactorial reason. There are many factors that could actually affect the learning of your students. You as a teacher is just one. But what about the learning environment? Paano kung napakadumi ng classroom? Paano kung napakaingay ng classroom? Paano kung nabubuli din siya ng kanyang mga estudyante, ng mga kaklase niya, 'di ba? So hindi mo kasalanan as a teacher because there are many factors that would actually, explain the performance of our learners. Okay? So, but what's pointed out here is that you should know what is right and what is wrong. As a teacher, we should always know what's right and what is wrong. So we should reinforce things that are right and we should eliminate those things that are actually wrong. Okay? So those are the 12 principles of high quality assessment. Okay? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, assessment isn't merely about giving a grade to our students. At its best, high-quality assessment provides usable information to inform us of our decisions and allow us to make real-time change that meets our students' needs. The first step is to design our assessment guided by the principles of high-quality assessment. From there, teachers should approach the resulting data with a spirit of flexibility and adjust their strategies accordingly. Okay? So pag tayo ay nag-isip ng assessment tool na ipapagawa natin sa ating mga estudyante, isipin natin itong mga principles na ito. Fair ba siya? Clear ba yung learning targets natin? Appropriate ba yung tools na ginamit natin sa learning targets? Valid ba siya? Reliable ba siya? Fair ba siya? Are we observing ethics? Are we communicating them to our students? Those kinds of things, we have always to remember those principles. Okay, because if we're making our assessment tools of high quality, then measuring learning will also follow. Okay, there will be there will be tools that are valid that would actually reflect the performance of our learners. All right, so that's it for our topic 3 in principles of high quality assessment, and this time you have to read the topic 4 in our module, in our unit 1, and you expect for a quiz this Friday. Okay, so there will be a very long quiz this Friday covering topics 1 to topic 4. Okay, so yeah, that's it, and this is the first episode of our Podclass in Assessment and Learning 1. I hope that you guys have learned, and I hope that it was able to help you understand the 12 principles of high quality assessment. So don't forget to do your module feedbacks, your applications. Meron tayong lesson plan analysis dito. Just follow the instructions and everything will be smooth. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and goodbye everyone. This is just the first episode. We'll have more episodes in our podcast. Have a good day. Thank you.